This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, Kristen McQuarrie from the Chicago Tribune editorial board. You've been reading her editorials lately on the surrender Republicans and the massive tax increase that was instituted yesterday, effective July 1. And so let's scale the conversation nationally, Kristen. So maybe there's some good news that doesn't otherwise exist in the land of Lincoln. The June jobs numbers are out, and hey, look, beat the street. 222,000 jobs created in June.
Not here.
No. This is a job desert.
We'll ask Scott about that.
But when you move to Wisconsin soon, then you're going to be able to participate with the rest of the country in talking about job creation and budget surpluses and so forth. Well, let's see if these jobs numbers mean anything other than a summer bubble before the looming fall correction. And to help us understand that, we're pleased to have our friend Scott the Cow Guy, Scott Shellady, Fox Business contributor. Scott, excuse you. Yes.
Good morning.
Your code is talking.
So 222,000 jobs created in June. The unemployment rate ticks up to 4.4%, but even that's good news because that means more people are looking for work. It's finally happening. We're on the cusp of the 7 fat years, 21st century, right?
No. I mean, here's the deal. This is going to look good to the street. People are going to talk about it and be excited. But at the end of the day, I'm not really that concerned about the jobs numbers as much as I am about growth, which would be the GDP number, and inflation. And we have no growth and we have no inflation. Until we have either one of those two, it's going to be hard for me to get excited. I mean, yes, we beat the street by 40-some-odd thousand jobs, and we had 2 revisions that added in 40-some-odd thousand jobs. So this report actually gave us almost 100,000 more jobs than we thought we had, yet average hourly earnings, what people make, went down. So where is all this competition for all these people that are getting put back to work? It's still not just adding up. So if we can't grow and our GDP is sub 2%, and we've got real earnings declining, are we really getting ourselves out of trouble here? Or, as you said, what's happening around the corner?
Well, I want to get your take on a column that Andy Kessler wrote in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. He poses the question, do we have a bull market or is it just market mania? And he essentially suggests, well, other than any signs, it could just be market mania and a substantial correction in the offing. He points to Uber being allegedly a bargain at a $68 billion valuation. He talks about shades of AOL Time Warner when Amazon bought Whole Foods for $13 billion and its stock price went up by more than that amount, or Tesla when it missed its numbers and the stock rose anyway, although now it's down 20%. Or the price of Bitcoin backed by nothing, but the faith of devotees hit $3,000 a share, tripling over a year. He's using those examples to suggest that it's more mania than bullishness based on fundamentals, and so that of the fall of a odd numbered year like 17 could be a big correction. Is that your view?
I'm skeptical. I've been actually tried it because we moved in from Greenspan's irrational exuberance speech to now we're in the series, we're in irrational ignorance, right? And everybody takes that personally, and ignorance doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you don't know all the facts. And I think that investors are now in a situation where they are irrationally ignorant. I mean, throw Snapchat and Blue Apron on that pile. I mean, Blue Apron's turned into Blue Bib overnight because everybody's got sick on themselves. But I agree with you. I think that we are now in a stage where people are ignoring the bad news. I mean, we have to grow and we have to inflate. That's how we're going to come in and support these stock prices where they're at right now. We can't go downstairs and buy a pint of lager with great with more consumer confidence and better consumer sentiment. That just does. You can't buy anything with that. So the rubber's got to hit the road, and I agree with the columnist because the way I see it, without being Debbie Downer or kind of Chicken Little, the sky is falling. At the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers. And yes, the jobs are better, but how come we're not having people compete for those jobs as far as wages? How come that's not coming through? So there's a lot of things here that just don't add up, and part of it is technology, and that's a whole other conversation. But the other part is that we're not measuring this the right way, and a lot of people don't feel as good as maybe this jobs number might say things are.
I don't think this is your area of expertise, Scott, but do you have any thoughts on Illinois? We're sort of on the precipice. We just passed a huge tax hike yesterday. Big day for the state.
He used to be an Illinois resident.
I know that. DePaul graduate, perhaps? Did I read?
I was an adjunct professor at DePaul.
Adjunct professor. So what are your thoughts on the fact that we still might be dropped to junk bond status? I mean, what is the rest of the country? Is that on their radar, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are just like, stadiums get renamed. Maybe Browner can put his $47 billion in the whole of Illinois, and we can rename the state Browner instead of Illinois. I mean, that's how desperate it is now. If the numbers are the numbers, we're bankrupt. I mean, it's over. I don't see a way out. And the more that we raise taxes on a smaller population that keeps crossing state lines with their hair on fire, who thinks in their right mind that that's really ever going to work out? I mean, there has to be kind of an Armageddon reform, right? We're not going to do this with a pen and a pencil and paper. That's what I'm afraid of because, yeah, Chicago's a great city. I spent most of my entire life there. But at the end of the day, over the last 40 years, structurally, it's almost over. I mean, how can you really consider getting out of the holes, especially when it comes to pensions and what their expectations are? I mean, with our GDP at 2% or less, and some of these pensions thinking that they're going to grow at 5 to 9% a year, it just boggles my mind where these people are coming up with these ideas. So at the end of the day, structurally it's over, I would say. And I don't know how they're ever going to pull themselves out of it. And I guess, I suppose they're looking towards the government, the federal government, to give them help. And that's probably the last pill that they can take.
Yeah, well, and that's probably not going to generate a lot of enthusiasm on the Hill because then everybody's going to get in line.
Right, 100%. That's a bad example to set, of course, because we're not the only ones. We're first in line, but we're not the only ones.
Could you give us what it might look like if we do hit junk? I mean, we keep hearing it'll be hard to borrow. We are, we're declaratively a risk. We can't pay off our debt. But what are some of the, from a finance perspective, what are some of the real problems if we do get dropped at least by one rating agency to junk?
Yeah, I mean, well, number one, on my sentiment argument, I mean, the sentiment is a lot of times leads the way, and a lot of folks start running for the door when things get that bad. But what it really means is this. We're going to have to pay more for our loans, right? So we're not going to be able to sell our bonds as expensively as we thought. So we sell our bonds cheaper because we're going to have to pay more interest on the bonds to garner that that income. And as we continue to have to sell more bonds to take in more income to kind of take care of our house here, what happens is that as the rest of the country, unless it starts getting real good real fast, and interest rates generally start creeping higher, take a look at the 10-year. It's moved from 2.15% to 2.40% in the last week and a half here. As those things start to ratchet higher, we're going to continually have to borrow more and more and more to pay more and more and more, and that's a spiral. So the average person needs to know that when we go out there and float our bonds, and especially if they get rated junk, that means that the bonds get cheaper and our interest on those bonds we have to pay back is a lot more expensive. That is a death spiral that you can't get out of unless you show real true growth. And it's going to have to come from the federal level first because we're just really not growing. So Illinois is going to have to come up with a rabbit out of the hat here kind of a thing. Or, like I said, it's structurally, if you just look at the numbers, almost insurmountable. Probably is insurmountable.
Well, you did a nice job of reining on those good jobs numbers in June, Scott. Thanks a lot.
I know.
He is. Well, no, you got to tell people what the real deal is, not just parrot the phony baloney based on fleeting numbers. Scott Shellady, he is Fox Business contributor, and you can get him at Scott the Cow Guy on Twitter. Scott, thanks so much for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
All right, try to have a good weekend.
Thanks. He joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.